Welcome back, everybody, to FreeBSD series. This is video number 5. So, we've been working within the operating system for a little bit now, and by this time, probably thinking to yourself, well, how do I update this system? Taking a look at the documentation, you can see over here on the right-hand side, we can see the FreeBSD documentation is absolutely fantastic. We will see there are some commands that we can run. I'm going to try FreeBSD-update, and I'm going to type fetch, and this should fail. We will sudo. You have to use sudo to get it to work. Hit enter, and we'll start that process of looking to see if we can do an update. And if that is the case, it will fetch the items that we need. And we're going to do this in real time. I'm not going to try to speed things up or do anything fancy, and I'm just going to kind of talk as we work through this. So if you're used to Linux, you're probably used to using something like apt. Maybe you're used to using Pacman or Yum or any of those package managers. You have generally two choices when it comes to FreeBSD. You can use ports, and ports is going to require you to do compiling. And the nice thing about ports is ports then gives you access to items like the source code for the application that you're going to build. But if you don't want to use ports, obviously you can use Pkg like we've been using, and those are pre-compiled binaries. Now, there's a few things to talk about here. If you want to use a pre-compiled binary, that's fine. Now, there are some people who will refrain from doing so, and their concerns are A, security. If you're not building your own tool from scratch, essentially, then how do you know what's inside of it? And that's probably a fairly valid argument. For most of us who are going to be working on these systems, we can use package and not have to worry too much. And this, we're going to do it again. We're going to get out of scope here by just a little bit. But you have to understand, if somebody is able to infect the tools that you use for compiling software, then they can essentially attack every application that you compile, right? So, with that said, the level of work that would be required to verify that everything is safe whenever you're compiling your own stuff is quite high. And in addition to that, probably not worth doing if you're not targeted. So packages for most of us they're going to be pretty safe, just for the sake of what we're doing, especially here. Now, obviously, if you're out and you're working for an incredibly big name company and you have to worry about state level actors or anything like that, yes, you're going to need to be concerned about your supply chain, and you need to be worried about things like somebody getting in there and executing an attack via the tools that you use for compiling code. I'll be the first one to admit that, and yes, there are people who do have to worry about that, but for the sake of this introductory level course, that's not exactly what we're discussing. So these are all of the files that have been pulled down. And we also see here, for the purposes of what I'm doing, FreeBSD 13.0 release is approaching end of life. We need to upgrade to a newer release. We'll probably do that later. So the next thing that we want to do is sudo FreeBSD-update install. Hit enter. So while that is happening, we'll talk just a little bit about what some of the differences here. Using a binary, a pre-built binary, faster. It can be very, very quick. It can be very easy. You just kind of load and go, right? If you're going to use a port, you are going to have to build from source. It's going to take longer. You're going to have a relatively beefy computer, because if you try to build from source something like Chrome, it can take a very, very long time. I used to just as I was teaching myself, I actually sat down on a MacBook Air. Had a MacBook Air. I loaded a virtual machine. I put NetBSD inside of it, and then using NetBSD, I created an entire system doing it using nothing but compiled. I used ports for the entire thing, and on that system, it took an entire like day and a half to build everything, to get through and create everything that I needed to have a system that was up and running. I scripted it all, set it all up, and then I would hit the button and I would let that thing run. And it took like a day and a half for it to be able to build everything, and that computer was hot to the touch. So, with that said, for some of us, you simply don't have the resources or the systems necessary in order to run everything from ports. So, packages, knowing that there are some security trade-offs, as well as your ability to have a visual into the code base, we're okay with binaries, right? And if you use apt, or if you use any of those tools like Yum, then you're already using binaries. Chocolatey for Windows, Brew for Mac, any of those tools, potentially you're already using something that has already been precompiled. Uh, and so you probably consented to that behavior anyways. So now that we have done an update on the system, the next thing that I want to do is I want to type MAN, so Mike Alpha November, and then PKG. So Mike Alpha November space Papa Kilo Golf. Hit enter. And this is the man file. Man files are great. If you are not familiar with man files, now is a great time to start familiarizing yourself with man files. What a man file or manual file is all the information that you need to know to be able to start working with an application. Now, I don't blame you if one of the first things you do is go and open up a browser and head on off to Google and then ask, how do I update applications in FreeBSD? How do I install an application in Arch Linux? Those are fine. Those are good questions, and you're going to get an answer off of something like Stack Overflow, and that's totally okay. But in the event that you ever end up at a place where you don't have access to internet, you're on an air gap network, you're working at a secure facility, you can't communicate out to the internet without going to very specific sites. You don't have access to your phone. Maybe whenever you are entering the building, you have to take your cell phone out, you have to put it in a Faraday bag, and then you have to go stick it with some security guard somewhere. I've worked in secure facilities like that. I've been to those secure facilities. I've been places where they make you empty out your pockets and you can't bring in a gun and you can't bring in a phone. And then at that point, what are you going to do if you need to find out about something? The man pages and the handbook that is within FreeBSD, that is how you are going to do it. Okay. So here we can see package. There is also a tool called package-static. Typically, you use package-static to install Pkg. Because we did that whenever we were installing the operating system early on, we don't have to worry about that. Okay. You can install a package and then you can have it run under a specific jail. So if you have already set up a jail for that package, you can install that package and then tell it, hey, you're going to run underneath this jail. And again, we're not at jails yet, but I'm just mentioning it so that you get that in your head. There are ways for you to be able to segregate applications within the operating system in order to provide enhanced security, usually, if properly configured, right? There's always that caveat. But if you do everything right, that jail could potentially make that application just that much more safer. In addition to that, if we need to chroot, you can do that from here. Whenever you are working on an application, we can do things like -L, which is going to list all the available command names. You can see, continuing down here, JL, chroots, configuration files, using IPv4 or IPv6 specifically for fetching repositories and packages. You can see all of the commands here. So we have add, annotate, alias, audit, auto remove, backup. Let's try audit. So we're going to go here. We're going to type pkg audit. We're going to hit enter. Pkg audit -f. And it's going to actually pull down Oh my goodness. Got to do it as sudo. Sorry. We're going to give it a few seconds here, and we've pulled a bunch of stuff down, and then now we see curl is vulnerable. There's a whole bunch of CVEs here related to curl. All right. What do we want to do? First thing we might do is package update. Sudo package update. Sudo package upgrade. Curl has an update. Look at that. So we did an audit of the system. We found out that there is a security vulnerability, multiple CVEs related to curl, and then we updated our repositories, and now we're upgrading curl because hey, there is a problem with it. So we say yes, proceed with that action. And now just hitting up a couple of times, we can run that audit. And now the system reports back that to the best of its knowledge, at this time, there are no identified CVEs that could potentially cause a problem on this system. Isn't that convenient? Especially for those of my users here who are hanging out with us, who have used things like Windows or Chocolatey or Brew or Arch and Pacman and so on and so forth. What a clean, what a nice set of tools, a very clean set of tools, very easy to use. I absolutely love the way that package Pkg works in FreeBSD in order to make sure that your system is up to date and that you have the stuff that you need. And by being able to use that audit command, you can very quickly just go in there and you can generate the documentation that you need to justify an update of the system or to work with stakeholders to make the changes that are necessary. There's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do here. So again, just taking a look here, we see a lot of information that is available to us thanks to the FreeBSD manual. But another thing that I want to show you is the FreeBSD vulnerability collection that documents everything that you need. So it's VUXML. And you can come here to this web page and we could go to, let's say, entered 0609-2022, Chromium, multiple vulnerabilities. We click here, we can see on 0609-2022, same date of entry, Chrome release, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 CVEs that were identified as issues, and we see a use after free and web GPU. Out of bounds memory access, out of bounds read and compositing, and use after free and angle. So all that looks like all memory issues, all related to most likely remote code execution that can be caused by an individual being able to manipulate, whether it be web GPU or being able to get in there in WebGL and cause an out of bounds memory access. So all of these items right here are probably remote code execution related, RCEs, right? And we can see what affected package there is. So if I had Chrome installed, Chromium, then I need to make sure that I am at least that level to be protected. So again, just a really great method for making sure that you're aware of what's going on security-wise within your system. You can also pull down this information. You can go into the FreeBSD ports collection, and your path would be port security VUXML, VUXML. I don't know if I like calling it VUXML. That sounds kind of bad. We'll just spell it out. But you can go there, and then you can pull this information down, and it will give you the information that you need, right? It's nice, convenient. I think the best word to use is convenient. So the next thing that we might want to do is, what if we want to find out about a package? We can actually type Pkg Search and then something like Apache. And now all the references to Apache that are within Pkg, we have access to that. Now, just kind of knowing about Apache, I can come here and I can see, okay, Apache version 2.4.x of Apache Web Server. That would be the actual application that I need to install, located here. Right there, and then that would give me Apache. So I could install that. Another thing that we might want to do is Pkg Search PHP, And now we can see all the little different versions of PHP that are available or things that list PHP. But we see PHP 88.1 is in here. We have pair and PECL and so on and so forth. So PHP 8.1 would be available to you. You have PHP MyAdmin, uh, PHP BB, which is a bulletin-based board. It's a discussion and forum system. There's a lot of stuff in here that you could search. And so remember, we haven't talked about this very much in here, but from previous training, you should know about pipe and then grep, and then we could type PHP 8.1, hit enter, and now we can see all the places where PHP 8.1 is referenced, right? And it highlights it for us. So remember, you have the skills necessary and the tools necessary to start that process of really drilling down into the information that you need. And we can see right here, PHP 8.1-8.1.5, and that's PHP. And then you can see all of the extensions that would be available. So if you wanted to install something like WordPress, obviously we're going to need BZ2, we're going to need curl, we're going to need a tool that's used for managing databases. We might even want to add LDAP support. All of those modules, those shared extensions, they're all in here. PDOs, I know I've used PDO, the PDO shared extension for PHP. I've had to use that MySQL all of that. So we'll go back down. That's searching. Easy, right? Pkg space search space whatever it is that you're interested in learning about. So what does it mean to build a package from source? If we were going to build a package from source, that would mean that we would go and get the source code, and then using the tools that are available to us, we would create that package. Why would you do that if we have access to precompiled binaries? You would do that for the purposes of a security audit. You might pull down the code, build from source, conduct a security audit of that code, and then now you know that you have a known good package without having to rely on somebody else for doing that creation. Another reason why you might do it is speed. Whenever you are building a binary that you are going to distribute, that binary has to be built for the lowest common denominator, which means that the creation of that binary is oftentimes much larger than it needs to be because it needs to support so many systems and so many combinations of hardware and so on and so forth. So to avoid that, you create from source and you build that binary specifically for your system. Therefore, you can cut down size, you can reduce the amount of hard drive space that is used by that tool, and oftentimes you can increase how much faster that application is specifically on your hardware. But again, there's a trade-off, right? Building from source means the next time you need to do an update, you're going to have to pull down that source and you're going to have to build from source again and again and again and again. Now, can you automate this? Yeah, absolutely you can. But for the vast majority of users, even in companies that are using applications that are relatively large and high usage, Nginx, Apache, so on and so forth. A lot of users connecting to that. The trade-off of building from source is sometimes not worth what you get from just using your package manager to manage everything for you. So we've identified some vulnerabilities. We talked about binaries and source and so on and so forth. In addition to that, if you ever get a CVE, I'll just pull one up. There are Cve lookups, but you can even just go to Google, type in the Cve name, and then you can find that Cve and you can get plenty of information. You can look at some of these databases, like this is NIST. That one has not been registered at NIST yet. That's interesting. Come down here to curl.se, which is their web page, and we can see all of the information, solutions, recommendations, info about the issue. You can even see the CVE 2022-32-205 was introduced in commit, and then it provides us a hash of that commit. And so we can click here, and we can see where all of the issues were introduced and how they were introduced. And we can see what code was removed, what code was added, and how this added up into the issue that we are now facing that they have since fixed. right? So this is more exploratory, right? The idea is you're looking at this from the beginner's mindset, but it's starting to give you an idea of who's making the stuff that I'm using. Where does it come from? Who are these people? Uh, what's a CVE? Well, now you know. A CVE is a number that is used to register a vulnerability that has been found, and a good project like curl is going to be able to go in and actually locate, okay, this is where this issue was introduced into the system. And we can even see the folks who are identifying it. So committed on May 4th, 2020 by this guy, Bagder, Badger. We can see the hash for the commit, and we can see everything that's in here. So a ton of information is out there. If you're interested in learning about this stuff, that information is available to you. You can find out about what is going on within your system by using the tools that are available to you. And all of it starts with, how do I install a package? How do I find packages to install? What am I going to use these things for? How do I do a very cursory overview of the security implications of what it is that I'm pulling down? Uh, how do I audit my system so I can make sure that I am up to date and that the CVEs that could potentially be a tool used to victimize me, how do I get rid of those? So with that said, this is actually a fantastic time to stop. I want to thank you for joining me on this video, and I'm looking forward to talking to you all again.